I usually think week one of an NFL season is always the toughest week to pick because sometimes you could be fooled by the preseason for the teams that look really good and the teams that don't look so good. You're heading into a new season where you don't know how things are going to play out. You have no real history in that current year in games that matter to know how a team looks, what their strengths or weaknesses are, how things are going to go. So it could really be a crapshoot. So I have to say, I was very pleased with my personal week one pick performance. 12-3 straight up picking the winners, 10-5 against the spread. And I'll look at it this way. If I could put up some type of performance even close to that consistently throughout the course of the whole season, I can rest easy knowing that I could have potentially made some money in Vegas and maybe should have flew out to Vegas and put some money on these games or found somebody in Vegas to put some money on these games for me. I would have profited very nicely. And also any of you that would be able to go to Vegas and take my picks and bet on them would have been able to profit nicely, would only increase my overall profile and my credibility and help me to not be the most underrated sports talker here on YouTube. So let's see what we can do in week two. And we know how the history usually pans out. If I do well one week, I get proud of myself one week, and then the second week goes to So let's hope it doesn't go to here in week number two. I've got off to a good start Thursday night. If you follow me on Twitter, at @TheJeffSchlegel is the Twitter handle. I picked Houston not only to cover the 5.5-point spread, but I picked Houston to win. And behind Deshaun Watson, as ugly as that game was, they ultimately did. So double victory for me. Yes! Let's talk about some of the other games. Let's look at the early Sunday games. You've got Arizona traveling to the who should be tanking Indianapolis Colts. I would assume Jacoby Brissett is the week two starter. You've got Arizona favored on the road, -8. However, they do not have David Johnson, their factor back, their do-everything guy, with him having wrist surgery. And the Cardinals ultimately screwed the pooch in week one on the road against Detroit, losing that game, and Detroit kind of pulled away from them late. How is this all going to break out? I'm still going to pick the Cardinals to win, because even if the Cardinals have some questions, they're still massively better at quarterback. They're massively better on defense. They're frankly still massively better on offense. And ultimately, I think they'll have too much for the Colts. I'll take the Cardinals. And originally I was thinking, maybe the Colts could cover the spread. I don't think so. I'll take the Cardinals -8. The Eagles travel to KC to take on the old coach, Andy Reid. The Chiefs coming off of that great victory week one on Thursday night against the Patriots. The Eagles with their own solid victory on the road against the Washington Redskins in the divisional matchup. The Chiefs are favored by 5.5 here. I like the Chiefs here, so give me the Chiefs, and I'll take the Chiefs minus the 5.5. You've got New England coming off of that week one loss, traveling to New Orleans to take on a New Orleans Saints team that didn't look very good in week number one either. New England's favored by 7. You can expect this to probably be some type of shootout, but I would anticipate and expect that the Patriots would be pissed, come out and be motivated. So I'm going to take the Patriots, and I'm going to take a minus the 7. A good matchup should be Minnesota traveling to Pittsburgh to take on the Steelers. The Vikings looked really, really good week one. The Steelers kind of look so-so against the Browns. Pittsburgh's favored by 5.5. I think Pittsburgh wins this game, but I think Minnesota keeps it close enough to where they cover the spread. So give me Pittsburgh to win and give me Minnesota plus the 5.5. Chicago travels to Tampa Bay on the heels of their week one matchup against the Falcons, a game for all intents and purposes they had the right to win and ultimately didn't. Tampa, with their bye week coming in week one due to the hurricane, now has their opening game of the season here in week two against the Bears. At least they get to have it at home. It's kind of a little surprising based off of what happened in week one with the Bears facing the Falcons, that Tampa, without a week of regular season action, is being favored by 7.5 here. I realize it's at home, and I realize you still think the Bears aren't very good, and there's reasons to not believe in that Bears offense, but that Bears defense is at least solid, and you don't know how Jameis Winston is going to come out and play week one. I think Tampa wins, but I think 7.5 points is a lot for the spread. So give me Tampa to win, but give me the Bears plus the 7.5. You got Buffalo traveling to Carolina. You've got your old defensive coordinator, Sean McDermott, now the head guy for the Buffalo Bills, coming into Carolina to take on his old team. And these are always interesting matchups. You wonder what type of advantage a guy like Sean McDermott has, because he knows the defensive personnel. He knows their strengths. He knows their weaknesses. Even if you say you change some of the scheme, you're still going to keep some of those principles in place. So it was kind of surprising to me. I know Carolina wasn't bad in week one, but they beat up on a bad 49ers team. To see them getting 8.5 at home, I really almost would call this kind of my upset special of the week. I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills, not only to cover the spread, but I'm going to take the Buffalo Bills, period. So give me Buffalo and give me Buffalo plus the 8.5. You've got Tennessee traveling to Jacksonville. You would have thought that Jacksonville would have been 0-1 heading into this game, but they stomped the Texans in week 1 on the road. They beat up on that horrible Texans offensive line. The Titans don't have that same horrible offensive line. I still think, even though the Titans lost at home week 1 to a really good Raiders team, that the Titans are still a pretty good team too. I'd expect them to piece it together and right the ship here a little bit. Give me the Titans minus the 1. And it's that simple. I think they'll beat the Jaguars in week 2. Cleveland goes to Baltimore on the heels of Deshaun Kaiser's first start, where he had a couple of moments of good and then some flashes of holding onto the ball too long and not looking so good, where the Ravens are coming off of a road shutout victory against a divisional rival in the Bengals. The Ravens are getting 10 points here, which seems a lot considering the Browns just covered their spread last week, staying within 3 points of the Steelers, especially because the Ravens don't have the same offensive firepower that the Browns faced in the Steelers. But on the flip side, the Ravens' defense is better. I am going to have to take the Ravens in this game and give me the Ravens minus the 10. Shifting to the late Sunday afternoon games, Oakland's favored by 14.5 against the Jets. It's a massive spread, and I think it's valid because the Jets are bad, even though they played somewhat competitively in week 1. You know, it's not like the Bills are great. The Raiders are much better. The Raiders just beat the Titans by 10 on the road in week 1. You have no reason to believe they wouldn't be able to cover the spread here. So give me Oakland to win and give me Oakland minus the 14.5. The Dolphins behind Jay Cutler go to LA to take on the Chargers. Let's see how many of the 30,000 seats in the soccer stadium the Chargers can sell here. I thought the Chargers were going to beat the Broncos week 1. They ultimately didn't, but they came back in the fourth quarter, made a game out of it, and still had a chance to tie it late. The Chargers are favored by 3.5. I don't know what to think of Miami at this point, which comes from Cutler, but also because they didn't play week 1 either. We've already seen the Chargers in week 1. I'm going to take the Dolphins in an upset here. Give me the Dolphins to win. Give me the Dolphins plus 3.5. Dallas travels to Denver to take on the Broncos. Dallas is a 1-point favorite. I was surprised, frankly, wasn't a little bit more. Give me the Cowboys to win and the Cowboys minus the 1. The Redskins go to LA to take on the Rams. The Rams having that impressive victory week 1 against a horrible Colts team. The Redskins smarting a little bit after the week 1 divisional loss to the Eagles at home. Now they've got to go all the way to the West Coast and face the Rams. You've got Sean McVay, the former offensive coordinator, facing his old team. I like the Rams minus the 2.5 here. San Francisco is going to Seattle. Seattle's favored by 15. Yeah, you got to take the Seahawks minus the 15. I'm sorry. On the Sunday night game, let's hope to God this is a good one. And for all intents and purposes, it should be. Atlanta didn't look great week 1 against Chicago. Green Bay didn't look great week 1 against Seattle. But you could say they at least faced solid defensive teams, and Seattle's defense is still really good. But here's a chance. 2 teams that, should be able to put up a ton of points. 2 teams that could struggle to stop the opponent. It'll be interesting to see. Typically, when Julio Jones has a down game, he comes out and he explodes the next game for the Packers. Now that you're not facing the Seahawks, granted, you have to go on the road, but you have to feel some confidence knowing week 1 you were able to beat a relevant, viable, competitive team in the Seattle Seahawks, where the Falcons struggled against a second-run Bears team. The Falcons are favored by 2.5. There could be some revenge factor here for Green Bay with last year's NFC Championship game debacle. The Falcons are going to be at home, so maybe with the opening of the new stadium, you would think, hey, they're going to be fired up and everything else. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. Sometimes teams lose their first game in their new stadium, Sunday night with all the spotlight on them. Give me the Green Bay to win plus the 2.5. And then Monday night, you've got Detroit traveling to New York to take on the Giants. The Giants are favored by 3, even though they lost week 1 and the Lions won week 1. That Giants defense is really good. Their offense, not so much. We'll see what happens with Odell Beckham Jr. I like the Giants minus the 3. So you're welcome, as always, to give me your picks straight up for the winners against the spread in the comment section below. We can keep track and see how you do compared to the Schleg Daddy this year. 12-3 straight up last week, 10-5 against the spread. Already 1-0 against both to start off the week. Let's hope the Schleg Daddy's got more in store, more success And hopefully some of you guys, if you live in Vegas or go to Vegas, can start making some money off me this year. Yeah.